For myself, and for probably many Western audience members, it'd almost be strange to see actor Hiroyuki Sanada on screen without a blade in hand. Since making his international film debut more than 20 years ago in Edward Zwick's The Last Samurai, Sanada-san has seemingly cornered an unofficial monopoly on playing Hollywood's premier Yakuza or samurai-related roles, which is why it may not surprise many to see him in his latest gig as the star of the FX limited series Shōgun. However, his latest character, the formidable Lord Yoshi Toranaga, is almost certainly the most demanding and intricate Hollywood role for Sanada to date. It's well known that James Clavell, author of the original Shogun novel, based many of his characters upon historical analogs, most notably the character of Toranaga, whom is modeled after the renowned real-world figure of Ieyasu Tokugawa, the man who unified Japan and effectively ended the Sengoku period. Toranaga is a complex and often contradictory character, both clever yet stubborn. He can be warm and paternal one moment, only to be coldly intimidating the next.
I cannot conceive of being an enemy to you, Lord.
The show's subtle characterization of Toranaga not only provides Sanada-san with ample opportunities to showcase his skillful nuance as an actor, but it's also one of the many ways that this reinvention of the Shogun story challenges how Hollywood has traditionally presented Japanese culture. Shogun's first live-action adaptation, the 1980 NBC miniseries, was critically and commercially a huge success in its time, breaking ratings records and certainly contributing to a burgeoning American interest with Japanese culture. While there's a number of things to appreciate about the NBC version of Shogun, series producer and writer Eric Bercovici had opted for some pretty liberal revisions from the source material when adapting Clavell's novel to the small screen. The most significant of these changes being, effectively, the omission of almost all of the Japanese dialogue. Bercovici's intention with his adaptation was to fully root the audience's perspective with that of the character of John Blackthorne, the English protagonist who finds himself marooned on Japan's shores.
And I told James Clavell my idea, which was to take his story, turn it inside out, and tell the whole tale of Shogun from Blackthorne's point of view, where we understand what he understands, where we see what he sees, and whenever he is confused, we are equally confused.
To that end, with Clavell's blessing, that not only meant that there would be no subtitles available for the spoken Japanese throughout the series, but also that the Toranaga-centric portions of the plot, where the character of Blackthorne is largely absent, would also be scrapped in favor of focusing exclusively on Blackthorne's journey to understand himself in this alien land and his budding romance with his interpreter Mariko. It was an extreme way to reframe the original story, but an effective one nonetheless. If you share John's communication limitations like most Americans, you're only able to learn things as John does, making it intuitive to feel things as he feels, and in a sense, the show very truthfully emulates the prevalent stranger in a strange land quality found in Clavell's novel. But for an epic that takes place in Japan, at a critical juncture in Japanese history, Bercovici's approach can equally be seen as an extremely limiting one as well. The 2024 version of Shogun, helmed by husband and wife co-creators Rachel Kondo and Justin Marks, opted not to follow directly in the footsteps of their adaptive forebears. Instead of rooting the narrative perspective in the character of Blackthorne solely, the new show's focus tracks multiple characters concurrently, tracing the schemes of lords, courtesans, and foreign priests alike all across feudal Japan. These many disparate plot threads often entangle in an intricate web of alliances and betrayals, distinguishing this modern shogun as a more engrossing and elaborate experience, drawing the audience in with its compounding layers of aesthetic and narrative detail. The attention to detail in all aspects was essential in the minds of the production team, but the degree of authenticity sought by Marks and Kondo clearly meant much more than simply translating screenplays from English into period-accurate Japanese dialogue. It meant a great number of things, such as enlisting Jidaigeki or Japanese period drama specialists, experts in designing genuine Sengoku-era costumes and sets, masters of gesture who choreographed traditional movements with the actors, and what this meant in the writer's room meant identifying and avoiding antiquated tropes, such as the aforementioned overemphasis on the experience of a foreign protagonist or exoticizing and over-sexualizing the female characters. The 1980 series, along with the original novel, perpetuate some of these tropes, which, along with some historical discrepancies, led to a number of critics from both domestic scholars of Japanese history to critics from Japan itself objecting to the original miniseries. But the power behind the meticulous cultural fidelity across Shogun 2024's entire production is not simply as a means for avoiding persecution from the historical accuracy mob, but rather the incredible depth of detail complicates our relationship with the expected images of Japanese culture. And one of the most compelling examples of this is in the show's portrayal of samurai. Like medieval knights, or even the American cowboy, samurai are historical figures who've calcified into character archetypes unto themselves. And while their depictions have evolved significantly through the decades, in most contemporary Western media, samurai are generally presented as unassailable symbols of duty and morality. Shogun, however, illustrates samurai not with this pure veneration, but instead, the series unearths the contradictions that lie at the heart of the symbol that samurai have become. The samurai stories told throughout Shogun are less about communicating some romantic ideal and are more akin to gateways into considerations about life, death, loyalty, and love. One of the inherent challenges in representing samurai lies in understanding that the role of the samurai class and the values that they embodied changed dramatically over time. Before the 16th century, samurai were simply mercenaries, skilled but largely poor, selling their services as a means of survival. From the late 16th century to the mid-19th century, they predominantly served as nobles, often governing at the local level and beyond. But by the end of the 19th century, samurai had all but gone extinct, having been banned along with the feudal system that they oversaw by Emperor Meiji. Henry Smith, Professor Emeritus of Japanese History at Columbia University, attributes the samurai's rapid evolution as a status group as being one of the primary reasons of how their practices came to take on a, quote, mythical existence for Japanese storytellers. Unlike in Hollywood though, across Japanese cinema, samurai are often morally complex figures, vessels through which filmmakers have been able to re-examine cultural values. In Akira Kurosawa's iconic Seven Samurai, the film explores the concept of duty, not just to one's lord, but to a cause or to the innocent. And in one of my favorite films of all time, the Kobayashi classic Harakiri, we see a tragic drama of how a ronin who wishes to commit seppuku reveal to a samurai clan that they are responsible for killing a young ward of this ronin, giving this clan the impression that the ronin wants revenge instead of absolution. But what I'm randomly and poorly surmising is a fantastic film that does an incredible job of interrogating and critiquing the Bushido code and samurai culture. So much of this context is often ignored in Western depictions of samurai in favor of a reverent, if not largely reductive portrait. Throughout Shogun's 10-episode run, it dedicates a significant amount of time to exploring its characters' interiority in a number of ways, clarifying for us who these characters are beneath their warrior identities. For example, the character of Mariko's husband, a samurai known as Buntoro, is shown to be a respected and skilled warrior who is fully devoted to his lord and willing to sacrifice his life if necessary. But Buntoro is also horribly abusive to his wife, maligning her lineage and contradicting the honorable expectations of his character both within the narrative, but also our own expectations of the samurai hero type. And even beyond its characters, the show makes some compelling considerations in how it depicts rituals such as seppuku. In an interview with Creative Screenwriting, series co-creator Justin Marks commented on the process when he and the writer's room were determining how they wanted to handle the subject of seppuku. We were trying to reach into something deeper because there is a pathos to it. A fixation on death is an act in itself. What we began to understand is this idea of death as an expression of life and that it sometimes can be used as a weapon of protest. When we started to see that, we see Blackthorn's journey over the course of 10 episodes to understand that this is not a pathos at all. It is actually a deep affirmation of the value of a life well lived and an expression of that. Seppuku is an ever-present specter throughout the show, but when it's highlighted, it's never merely for shock value, nor does the show attempt to explicitly rationalize the practice for the viewer. But seppuku's inclusion allows us to explore what it means to consider death as a practical option. What I enjoy about how Shogun does this is that it emphasizes the emotions and the circumstances that surround the ritual, rather than simply painting it as this idealistic concept that's always unquestioningly executed. All of these many considerations result in a show that never treats samurai or their customs sensationally. Shogun 2024 is a production uniquely attuned to the themes and philosophies that define both its source material, but also its cultural subjects. And the writing is, thankfully, richer for it, imbuing its setting and characters with an abundance of context that tactfully connects the viewer to the circumstances of the age, while also enabling its drama to more seamlessly render the characters as fully realized people, flawed and fascinating in their own unique ways. Earlier I mentioned that the depiction of samurai in Japanese film and media has changed quite a bit through the years, and it will inevitably continue to evolve, probably in no small part because samurai themselves were a group who were central in explaining the transformation of Japan. I think that it's apt then that this new Shogun adaptation could and should provoke people to think on what has and hasn't changed from previous portrayals of Japan and samurai, to consider how narratives can be reshaped by contemporary concepts and stakes into something familiar yet fresh. Because conventions can exist, they will inevitably exist, but they don't have to be static. Unlike the unyielding steel of a samurai sword, Shogun shows us that when some stories bend, they can reveal truths more nuanced than any katana's edge. What is up guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always I would love to hear if any of y'all have thoughts on Shogun or Samurai, and apparently we're getting a season 2 of Shogun, which has bubbled up since I wrote this, which is exciting if not confusing. But before I drag on any longer, if you happened to like this, I'd be honored if you like this, and even more honored if you want to subscribe to catch more content like this on the regular. And I swear the regular will be more regular soon. But that's all I've got for now, so as always, have a good day, have a good life, and I will see you on the next one.